On your Thursday episode of Locked on Raptors, we continue our player review series with a look at the season that was for Precious Achiuwa, the return of the Kyle Lowry trade, who underwent maybe a more meteoric rise than any member of the Toronto Raptors this season. We'll dig into our biggest positive takeaways from the year, the stuff that needs work going into 2022-23, and then we've got our stat of the year, play of the year, and the outlook for next season, all with a wonderful guest, Samson Folk, who loves himself some Precious Achiuwa. That's all coming up on today's episode of Locked on Raptors. Thanks for being here.
You are Locked on Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1177 of Locked on Raptors for Thursday, May the 12th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley of RaptorsHQ.com. You can find me on Twitter, as always, at WoodleySean. You can find the show at Locked on Raptors, and you can find the podcast free and available on all your favorite podcast platforms. You can support the show by subscribing, leaving a rating or a review, telling a friend, all that good stuff. We are also on YouTube for free. You can go and subscribe, just sign on up and help juice the stats, baby. Even if you're not going to watch the videos every day, I just ask that you subscribe and then maybe have it run in the background on mute. That's also very helpful, increases our watch time numbers and all that good stuff. Anyway, we can fiddle with the numbers to make me look good is a thing I very much appreciate. Anyway, thanks for making us your first listen of the day. And on today's show, we are talking about Precious Achiuwa and the season that was. He was really fun to watch, as roller coaster-y a player as I can remember watching, but by the end of the season, the downturns of the roller coaster, I guess, like, it's weird because going down the roller coaster is fun, yet in basketball parlance, that's like the bad stuff. I don't know. We'll sort through it with today's guest. It's Samson Folk from Raptors Republic. How are you? What kind of roller coaster would you classify Precious Achiuwa as?
Okay, I'm a coward in many things in life, and I will say roller coasters, the rides, all that kind of stuff, they were not my thing at any point.
Fair enough.
So if it were a roller coaster, I would consider it bad because I want something simple. Like, you spin the wheel in the middle and you kind of rotate around, whatever it is, something like that, a little bit more low key. But Precious, if we could find another, analogy, that it just works really great. I enjoyed the season, the hell out of it. And the horns in your intro music, I'm a sucker for horns, so I enjoyed that a bunch too.
I'm very glad that you're happy with both the subject matter and the production of the podcast. That means we're off to a good start. So yeah, we're going to dig into everything from Precious's season. We're going to talk about our biggest positive takeaways. We'll get into the negative side of things, the downturns of said roller coaster to figure out what can be improved upon for next year. And then we have our stat of the year, play of the year, both of which are under a veil of secrecy and will be revealed in the final segment of the show, and then the outlook for 2022-23. But let's begin, Samson, with your biggest positive takeaway about not Pascal Siakam. That was Monday's show. Go listen to it with Vivek. Precious Achiuwa, what was your biggest Precious Achiuwa takeaway in the positive vein from this season?
It has to be the defense. And this was something I clued into kind of, I think it was towards the back end of November. I started talking about it. Like, you're looking at a guy, Precious, who you see he makes a lot of mistakes on the floor, but the numbers are you're starting to get a healthier sample size. And some things are really starting to pop off. Like a lot of his contests, his first contest, he'd force a miss. His second contest, he'd force a miss. His timing on the help side stuff was getting a lot better. And then every once in a while, you'd get like an isolation possession. And that really started in January, where the Raptors, I think, emboldened by his performance against Giannis on January 15th, I think. Most Raptors fans will remember that game. He was picking him up three-quarter court, making it really tough for him to get into the paint and just finding a lot of success. Then it became Luka, then it became Jimmy, then it became Trey on switches, then it was LeBron, then it was Embiid. It was a murderer's row of talent and brute physicality that he stood in front of. His defense. Not only was he one of the best shot changers on the Raptors, but he was one of the best switch defenders. He was far and away, I think, their best low pick and roll defender, whether it was in drop or switch or blitz or anything like that. And while he wasn't the headiest of weak side defenders to kind of close these gaps and shade to the corner, and maybe the dig downs and the doubles weren't as effective, but as a primary guy, when he's involved in the action, he just shuts down so many things. And so to go from Miami, where before the season I was looking at it and he still had positive numbers in changing shots at the rim. He still had positive defensive numbers, but it was on such a small sample size that you had to wonder what's going to carry over and what does that look like in the Raptors' hellacious scheme. And the best part is that everything that was positive about Precious carried over. And then he kind of papered over some of the bad things too. So just a demonstratively fantastic defender who I've been saying for some time now, like he's going to be on all defensive teams for how many years? I don't know, but he's going to be there. He's awesome.
It's a loaded category, but
Yeah.
where would you classify him among Toronto Raptors defenders right now? Like, is he the best defender on the team? Like, or is that still maybe a couple years off?
Yeah, probably not. In spurts, I would say yes. But Pascal is playing 40 minutes a night and has been since November 28th. Or sorry, December 28th when he got back from COVID. 40 minutes a game. You have to be on the court. Precious, even in the playoffs, Precious only, I think, eclipsed 30 minutes 2 times or 1 time. And so you have to be on the court. It's like the Thibault thing where Raptors fans are like, why the hell is this guy on all defense? He played 19 minutes a game. Precious playing 26 minutes a game was a huge win. I can't wait to see him playing 28 or 30 next year. And but in spurts, he's absolutely the best. He can be the best defender on the Raptors by like a wide stretch. His peaks are so high, you really can't see them. They're covered in clouds, right? But it's probably for a portion of the season, it might have been Fred. And because OG was dealing with stuff early on. And then for a portion of the season, it may have been OG. And then for a portion of the season, it may have been Pascal. And Precious in spurts beats out those guys. But yeah, I'm just kind of being very verbose. Yes, sometimes, but not all the time.
Hey, that's fine. We're not here for hot takes, man. We're here for that nuance, baby. It's a nice thing. Like, oh no, my arms are overflowing with all of these fantastic defenders. It's difficult to classify them all in a nice, easy order because different contexts, different situations. It all calls for different stuff. But yeah, I think the highs of Precious are like the most jaw drop inducing. Like it's like, oh, okay, guess he's doing that now. Sure. For me, I think my biggest positive takeaway from Precious, and this is like a pretty big picture thing when it comes to the overall sort of vision for the team, is like, I think he proved this season that if this Vision 6-9 thing is going to work, he is kind of the one who unlocks it as the center of whatever the team is going forward, right? Like I know there's a need for center skills, and yes, some size would be nice in certain matchups or whatever, but I feel like Precious kind of has it within him to do the things that you need centers to do, which is dive to the rim, be a vertical threat. He can pop for threes. Obviously the rim protection numbers are fantastic. And to me, like he kind of checked a lot of those boxes that they didn't really have checked in the early part of the season when they were trying to figure out their center rotation. Ken Birch wasn't doing all of it. Chris Boucher's too slight, I think, for that position. But Precious, at his size, despite being shorter in stature, is just like he feels a lot bigger because of his athleticism, because his arms go for days, and because of the things he got good at this year, in addition to all the other stuff, which, the putting the ball on the deck and stuff like that, that's not typical center stuff. That is very much Vision 6-9 Raptors stuff. I think if this is going to work, and if the Raptors go forward, totally bought in on everyone just being 6'9" and playing that way, it works because Precious Achiuwa is doing the stuff that he flashed this season in sort of a bigger, more sort of large scale role. What did you make of the way Precious did the center stuff this season? We can talk about all the flashy things, and we'll probably get into it in the play of the year, stat of the year, and stuff like that. But as far as just like being that sort of central dude who you just kind of need to do the dirty things, and that they didn't have necessarily last season, for example, and didn't have for long stretches of this year, do you think Precious performed capably in that stuff? Do you think there are areas where he's just never going to be able to offer all the same features that a typically sized center would offer? Where are you at with that?
I think he did a hell of a job given the constraints. I think we're seeing in the Milwaukee-Boston series, you're seeing the very and Raptors fans are well aware of the positive, passive wins that a huge guy in the middle of the court presents. It's having Marc Gasol, who is not nearly the athlete that Precious Achiuwa is, having Marc Gasol for a couple years, change passing angles for lobs, change, shooting angles for floaters, and just be such a deterrent because of size and being flat-footed. So he doesn't have to commit to anything. Precious Achiuwa can't really do that because he's not as big. And so he'll never have that Brook Lopez, Marc Gasol type of thing where you can put him in low drop and funnel guys into 14 to 19 footers, kind of like where Pascal Siakam had to play against the 76ers, for example.
Sure.
He'll never have that, the classic drop center thing. But in high drop, he was really great at containing penetration, recovering back, relying on his athleticism. That's something he can do in spurts, and the Raptors can have a lot of success with. That's kind of classic. That's classical, I guess, center defense. He probably can't do it all season because it's such a taxing style to just always
Sure.
chase back and forth. But I thought he was awesome. He's correlated, in the stats, in the on-off stuff and his rebounding percentages are great. I think that he was a huge part of helping the Raptors close out their defensive possessions. Offensively is probably where he gives you like nothing that a center does, basically. But defensively, as you said, I think it was really great the way you put it together, that he makes it go because he makes the rim protection a little bit more valid. He makes the point of attack defense on these big brute players more valid, and his strength in there. His strength is everything. Like OG Anunoby is an incredible defender, but he's also, you can see like coordination and fluidity isn't always exactly his best thing.
Sure.
And Precious Achiuwa and a guy like Terrence Mann or Hamidou Diallo, these athletes are guys who, if you ask them like in a parkour gym to do, like, can you do this? They have the strength and fluidity to kind of move through all these kind of things. Kinetic savants, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
Precious, his ability to be fluid, quick, and way stronger than Pascal is, for example, and as strong as OG is, for example, while maintaining the fluidity. He's such a rare defender. I don't think there's another guy like him in the league. And so he gives you a lot of the positive center stuff without the classical drop stuff. So yeah. Good.
Sure. The defense is, I think, really the sort of overwhelming positive thing you're thinking about going forward to next season. The offense, however, did make some positive strides in the back part of the season. We'll dig into the good and the bad of the Precious Achiuwa offensive experience in just 1 second here. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Bet Online, who are the #1 place for you to get all of your sports betting needs and info taken care of, so you can be the informed wagerer if you are going to drop some money on the upcoming, the basketball games. You got the hockey playoffs going on. You got NFL futures already available. It's all there. You can find all the news, info, injury reports, and sports developments that you might need to make that informed wager, all at betonline.net. They are your continued source for all of the sports wagering you might want to do. You get live betting, you've got esports, you've got the futures market like I talked about, and you got Vegas casino games and everything else in between. Head to the website today, use your mobile device, learn more about the trends in the action at BetOnline. It is where the game starts. We continue on here with our chat about Precious Achiuwa with Samson Folk from Raptors Republic. And let's get into the stuff that needs some work going into next season. Probably safe to begin with the offensive side of the ball here. Precious, of course, started off extremely rough, where the most inefficient play the Raptors could run was an offensive rebound and falling into the clutches of Precious Achiuwa underneath the basket, where it felt like 90% of the time he was either bricking it or getting it slapped away as he brought it down to the floor. That stuff cleaned up as the season went along. A lot of the sort of overzealous, over-eager, possessions where he'd just kind of kick it away or piss a bad shot selection away or whatever it might have been, that got fewer and further between as the season went along. Of course, there were still those little elements. We wouldn't love Precious Achiuwa if they weren't part of that. But what were your impressions of the offensive side of things for Precious this season, and what do you think kind of needs the most work going into next year?
High-hanging fruit only. No low-hanging fruit for our friend Precious Achiuwa. And when he started to pick some of the low-hanging fruit towards the end of the season, like hitting corner threes or just catching a lob instead of having it slip out of his hands, that's when everything started to come together. Because we started with defense for a reason. He was a great defender. The Raptors defense was way better with him on the floor. Other teams shot way worse with him on the floor, and he was awesome. Offensively, he tanked their offense all the time when he was on the court, and that's really too bad, because the Raptors were kind of doing this, this song and dance where Kem would start a game because he wouldn't take the offense and they could get him into the short roll, and Kem would hit a floater or filter to the corner or something like that. Give you the classic, like, get a screen, get a guy to a spot, all that kind of stuff. And Precious, his spatial awareness or want to do that kind of stuff the classical big man stuff on offense, set the screen, roll into space, make sure that your spacing is proper to preserve driving lanes, all that kind of stuff. That wasn't really, I guess, represented in his game. And if it was a low light. It was something where he's rolling into Pascal's driving lane, bringing a second defender over and his own body. And he got better at that stuff, but not because he got better at it, but just because he started shooting 3-pointers better. So they didn't have to ask him to do that stuff very often. He didn't have to roll very often. So he didn't muck stuff up. And so he became a guy. The Raptors this season were very, very hesitant to use anybody besides Gary, OG, or Fred spacing above the break. Typically, part of their offensive ethos is you're going to be below the free throw line. You're going to get after it on the offensive glass because we want offensive rebounds way more than we want a Thaddeus Young above the break triple or a Pascal Siakam above the break triple, a Precious above the break triple. But that changed after the All-Star break. He hit threes. His offensive process got simplified because he started to play more like a guard or a wing. He was a guy who would hit, catch and shoot threes, would space out, would attack closeouts. And as we know, he looked fantastic attacking closeouts. He was fluid. He was great finishing at the rim. And so that was awesome to see. But there's still so much left on the table as far as what he can do as a big man. This is something we saw even Pascal Siakam this past season kind of get better at with the screening because he had to unlock Fred more often and they had to lead more on their two-man game to win. And putting down good screens is really important. Precious is not there yet. And so there's lots going on offense. The guard/wing stuff, it's fair to say he's way ahead of the curve as far as a lot of other bigs. The series against the 76ers, as bad as he was in game 6, where he shot 1 for 7, was pretty poor in decision making. He helped swing the middle of the series because he was able to take Embiid off the dribble and easily. And if Embiid was in space, that was food. That is a rare feat. That's something that even Pascal struggles with, for example. Although Pascal has more defenders hanging over and all that kind of stuff. But I tell you this, it's a very unique, a cosmic gumbo, if you will. And I would say that's like where I leave off as far as my opening statement on Precious' offense, a cosmic gumbo.
Yeah, it's, it was very notable by the end of the year. Like the fact that a couple of those blow-bys of Embiid took place because he was very clearly worried about Precious bombing a 3 on his head. Like it started to matter, after the All-Star break, which is kind of like the very easy arbitrary cutoff for a lot of things with the Raptors season, with Fred going down and the team shape kind of changing. Precious shot 39% on nearly 4 attempts a game. Like that's not nothing. And it's in fact quite something. And, that I think as sort of a baseline for his game leaves it so even if the other offensive stuff doesn't all the way come, obviously that'll limit his overall ceiling, but it makes it so he's going to be a guy you can have on the floor and feel pretty comfortable about it as long as you can find someone else to do the center stuff that you're looking for. And it'd be great if he could do that, right? I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a worse screener than like November Precious Achiuwa. Just like never hit a dude ever. Fred's just like, please, man, I need a little bit of space here. I'll figure it out because I'm Fred VanVleet in November and I'm just hitting everything. But like, please God, just a little bit of room off of the screen would be fantastic. And it just wasn't coming from Precious. And I remember the lob chemistry between Fred and Precious was a nightmare early on too, right? And that's something that slowly got better as the season went along. It wasn't a very common thing they would go to, but it stopped being, well, this pass is 9 feet over Precious's head, or Precious is not in the right spot, not jumping at the right time, to, oh, okay, they can connect on that pretty reliably. Hopefully that's something that can carry over as well, and you can get that vertical gravity going too, because they've never really had that kind of vertical threat, at least as long as I've been covering the team. It's just not really a thing that's been a thing that the Raptors do. So there's that. What was that? Yo,
Bebe,
right.
Nogueira.
Oh, Bebe.
It's been years.
Damn right. Yeah.
But even he was
guy.
kind of like a bit role player.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess my question for you is, how real do you think the shooting is? It's, it looked good. The shot looks nice. When it goes in, it very rarely hits rim at all. It's very pure. But like the shooting numbers across the board, not terribly inspiring. Even with him, kind of getting hot in the back part of the season, still finished with just a 50.3 true shooting, could not salvage that brutal start. And from the free throw line, this is, I think, the thing that gives me a little bit of concern, because what do you hear all the time in draft coverage and leading into the draft is that, free throw rate and, your accuracy there often can inform what your 3-point stroke is going to look like. It's not a perfect 1-to-1. It doesn't always happen that way, but that is one of the sort of agreed upon truths when it comes to projecting 3-point shooting. He shot 59.5% from the line in the regular season. In the playoffs, he was 60%. Of course, had those two notable misses in game number 3 against the Sixers, which everyone I'm sure will remember for quite a while. Are you at all concerned about the sort of rest of his shooting profile not really agreeing with the idea that he's a good shooter? Do you think that's stuff that can come because of the touch he seems to have? Where are you at with the sort of likelihood that Precious can carry forward this 3-point shooting he showed in the back part of the season?
Yeah, 39% at 4 a game. Maybe the 4 a game kind of kicks around. It stays there heading into next season. I'm sure the Raptors would like that. The Raptors like when guys shoot threes because they have 3 guys on their team who shoot them, so a little more helps. But I feel pretty good about his 3-point shot. Obviously there are, you can get into the Galvis dip and all the kind of stuff. Like you can get into shot doctors and all that kind of stuff. But his shot looks pretty smooth. There's no hitch. He has a high release. There's nice spin on the ball. That's as deep into it as I'll go. And also like for fans and people who watch, when you watch him pull up, it looks better than a lot of other people pulling up on the Raptors who are better stationary 3-point shooters. We talked about his fluidity already, and free throw, just because of how the 3-point land is changing and how guys get shots is changing, and how much more dynamic you have to be to shoot threes, because it's no longer like 2010 Shane Battier isn't standing in the corner after LeBron James has shown everybody like this is what a skip pass does to a defense when it comes like 18 times a game. It just breaks them. Teams are pre-rotating. They run guys off the line now. So that fluidity, I think, helps with his catch and shoot. Like a lot of his shots were like pound dribble, sidestep into space, or like, little drop dribble, gather, hit a shot, and all that kind of stuff. So the collinearity between the free throw percentage and 3-point, I'm not as sold on as I may have been prior, because it's the stationary aspect of it. I just don't find is that similar anymore. Just the way that teams run guys off the line. And Precious, I don't know of any predictive shooting stats. Like in baseball, there's wonderful predictive stats because it's a discrete sport. But in basketball, I'm not really sure if there's a stat I buy into. And of course, as you say, we're trying to find like these peripheral stats that indicate some sort of ceiling or floor. But I feel perfectly fine with Precious shooting, threes, not maybe his heart's desire next year, but if he gets the ball, if he's open, I like it a lot. So I feel confident about it to come in at like 34, 35%. And anything above that, that's gravy, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You don't want to sort of just assume he's going to be a knockdown shooter of the ilk of Trent or Ochi or Fred like he was in the back part of the season. That feels like a little bit of an unfair set of expectations for a dude who is still very raw and figuring things out. But yeah, I think I'm comforted by the fact that I feel like most of his threes are going to be very wide open. Like a lot of it's going to come off of Pascal's creation or Fred's creation or Scotty's creation. Like he's not going to have to go and create his own threes out of thin air all that often. And if he does have that really explosive first step off the catch, like that makes it even more of a sort of calculation for the defense as to what the hell do we do about this guy. So yeah, I think where I'll come in as sort of my prediction, my expectation, my hope maybe, because I don't have any prediction, like you said, there's no predictive stats, but like if he can be the guy who the other team actually has to worry about shooting, that's not something the Raptors have a ton of, right? And just having another guy like that, even if it's not at 39%, will be super, super valuable and, a great thing to sort of hopefully bank on next season. We're going to continue on. We're going to do our stat of the year, our play of the year, and our outlook for 2022-23 for Precious Achiuwa. That's coming up in 1 second. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at rockauto.com, who are saving you money when you go to the mechanic. And I made this mistake last week. I was kind of in a panic. I went to take my car in to get my tires changed over, and they said I needed to get something fixed in my car. And I, like a fool, said, all right, just go ahead and do it. Instead of just taking my car back, going to get the part myself and figuring it out, I just paid whatever they asked me to pay for the driving belt or whatever it's called. I know nothing about cars, you might realize. And so I spent more money than I should have at the mechanic last week, and it's because I did not go to rockauto.com. I panicked. Don't be like me. Go to Rock Auto, get cheaper parts and get more selection of the parts that you get to put in your car. They'll give you multiple different options, prices, specifications, different brands you can choose from, as opposed to just the one thing the mechanic happens to have in the store. And they are a family business. They've been doing it for 20 years, and they are the same cost-wise when it comes to professionals or do-it-yourselfers. And their website is so easy to use that I can navigate it. And again, I should have done that last week and taken my own advice that I've been spewing on this podcast for years. Either way, go to rockauto.com right now. Don't be like me. See all the parts available for your car or truck and write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the car parts you'll ever need at rockauto.com. All right, we continue on here to close out the show with the way we do all of these player review episodes and tie a nice little bow on them. We are starting with the stat of the year. We got the play of the year. We got the outlook for 2022-23. Let's begin, shall we, with the stat of the year from you, Samson, about Precious Achiuwa. What you got?
33% unassisted, which is the 75th percentile for bigs. We've been talking about it this whole podcast, basically, but that improvisational bent that he has, as you're saying, wide open threes. Precious Achiuwa is in an offensive context where if the ball gets to him, defenses are very ill-equipped to deal with his guard skills, his ability to put the ball on the floor, because if it gets to him, they either are going to allow that open three or they're loading up on other guys, typically if he's sharing the floor, especially with Pascal and Fred, that they can't really rotate over. And as we saw against the 76ers, he puts one dribble down, he gathers, he's going to dunk the hell out of the ball. And we saw, I don't know if he has something going on with Onyeka Okongwu, but he dunked on him like 3 times this year against the Hawks too. Nasty ones at that. But I think his ability to put the ball on the floor, while, maybe at the end of the podcast, we'll talk about what he's doing next year, of course, but that's what makes him unique. And that's represented in a stat that's maybe fetishized a little bit too much now, the unassisted percentage, but one that I like. 33% unassisted is pretty damn good for second year big.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I'm going on the defensive side of things here, and I am not using a number necessarily. I'll get to the numbers in a sec, but my stat of the year for Precious Achiuwa, much like your beautiful WNBA sweater, is orange, baby. If you are a subscriber to cleaningtheglass.com, you will know that they have the little percentile where a guy ranks, and if it's a very good percentile, it is a deep hue of orange. And I have pulled up Precious Achiuwa's on-off defensive stats, the way he impacts the other team's shooting accuracy, to be precise, when he is on the floor. The opposing team saw an effective field goal percentage of saw their effective field goal percentage dip by 3.2 percentage points, the 92nd percentile in the NBA when he was on the floor this season. At the rim, he's 87th percentile, short mid-range 64 percentile, long mid 76 percentile, all mid-range 75th percentile, corner threes 83rd percentile. The only area in which the other team shot not embarrassingly bad compared to their usual numbers when Precious was on the floor was from non-corner threes, and they still shot 0.4 percentage points worse, 53rd percentile, 77th percentile for all threes. Precious Achiuwa, when he was on the floor, made the other team miss more shots. Samson, it's basically as simple as that. He just was a constant positive impact for the Raptors defense when he was out there, and I am excited to see how he continues to kind of level up in that department. Rim protection stuff, it's not easy when you're 6'9", 6'8", whatever the hell size he is, but he managed to pull it off with the best of them. Orange is your stat of the year for Precious Achiuwa, baby. We're turning it on its head. Let's get to the play of the year, shall we? Our favorite Precious plays of the year. I will turn it to you, Samson. What do you got?
Okay, so this one, it was after Pascal Siakam doubled Joel Embiid. This is a playoff, so I hope it's okay if I do a playoff play.
Go nuts. Yeah,
sure.
Recency bias is fine. My favorite play of the whole year was the back-to-back Scotty lobs in Game 5, so you're fine.
So Pascal doubles on the catch, Embiid turns the ball over, Pascal gets the outlet, and then in transition drops it off to Precious. And the reason why I thought this was so special is because Embiid got back in transition, and Embiid is this he's one of the best defenders in the world. In the playoffs, many people make the case that he's maybe the most affecting defender in the NBA. He's awesome. And Precious went up against him. And we talked about a fluidity in this podcast, but you'll recognize OG Anunoby when he kills people when he drives because he plunges his knee 8 feet into their chest.
Yep.
And
breaking sternums all over the place. Yep.
That's exactly right. Precious that's because that's what you do when you jump, your knee juts out. But a lot of guys, depending on your core strength, your body control, and all that kind of stuff, you can draw that back in. And Precious went up for a dunk. And so the knee jutted out, and Embiid was waiting there, and Embiid is contesting. And Precious, he slides that knee back under himself and then starts extending out, and his body starts turning in air. And he finished over Embiid with the left hand. And I was like, that's a really, really unique thing to be able to do. That's so much body control, so much fluidity. And hopefully the touch stays because, as we talked about, the touch was poverty at the start of the year, like in shambles. So to be able to do that kind of stuff, not only the physical fluidity, but the soft touch to finish at the rim, like Russell Westbrook used to have to decelerate your arm because you're going at these breakneck paces. That's what Precious did. All that encompassed in one play, just the high and then the finish out. It was, I loved that play. It was like poetry in motion.
That's fantastic. Mine is also, it's kind of a mirror play. I have 2 plays that kind of inform one another, both also against the Philadelphia 76ers, who I'm sure never want to see Precious Achiuwa again. I'll go back. The first one came October 4th, 2021, during the preseason. Raptors, Sixers taking each other on. I'm looking at a video posted by recent guest of this podcast, Jackson Frank, where he took a clip of Precious Achiuwa walking up all the way and pulling and stopping and popping for an 18-foot pull-up mid-ranger. Very in the early days of kind of us learning what Precious Achiuwa is all about. Fast forward that to the final week of the season, Raptors-Sixers. The Raptors beat the Sixers at home. Precious Achiuwa, out of nowhere, grabs a rebound, walks it up, stops and pops for a pull-up 3-inch transition at the top of the arc, and cash. It was glorious. It was totally cackle-inducing while I was sitting on my couch. One of my favorite types of plays that just kind of makes me uncontrollably lose my shit. Just, look, is that informative of what's coming in the future for Precious Achiuwa? Not necessarily, but I do think it's indicative of the insane highs that he's capable of, and he can string those together more often next year beyond that, whatever it might be. You're looking at a pretty problematic player for the rest of the NBA. So I will go pull up Precious as my mirror plays of the year, and I'm sorry to the Sixers for all of the strays they're catching in this section here. Let's get now to the look at 2022-23, Samson. Do you have any hopes, dreams, ambitions for Precious? What are you kind of expecting, A, his role to be next year, and B, sort of his production? Is he going to win an award, or is he going to be in the all-defense conversation? What do you got for 2022-23 Precious in terms of early expectations as we sit here on May the 12th?
Okay, so low-hanging fruit. Please, for the love of God, watch DeAndre Ayton work as a screener and rolling into space. Basically, DeAndre Ayton's job on the Phoenix Suns is to always swivel his hips and be accessible for a pass because it could come from anywhere. And typically working with Chris Paul, that's the case. I think Precious, as he continues to work with Pascal, who always creates open looks, always trying to find the soft spots, is important because Pascal gets doubled. And next year, I'm sure we'll get doubled at a top 5 rate in the league. Make sure you find the soft spots. It's hard, but it's something you have to work on. All bigs have to do it. And into the future, just being always ready for whatever the hell kind of half-court playmaker Scotty is by year 5 or something. Just be ready, to leap for the ball at the rim, to get a bounce pass, whatever it is. Just that spatial awareness, the proprioception, right? Your awareness of your body in space. That kind of stuff I'd like him to work on, set good screens. That would be huge. That unlocks so much for the Raptors. And I hope he starts. That would be great. My wish for next year is that the Raptors re-sign Boucher because Boucher was tremendous and he'll continue to be tremendous, I think, especially in this scheme, offensively and defensively. I hope that they start Precious. I hope that they stagger his minutes so he gets to play a lot with Boucher still. And I hope they lean into those funky lineups, but with Fred still on the team, of course. And I think all defense next year. I think he's there, man. I think he's going to do it. Do I have stats in mind? I don't think I have stats in mind. I think he's just going to be a super positive player. and doing a lot of the heavy lifting on defense still. If he's a positive on offense, like in the on-offs, that's a huge win. Just as like the macro look, the micro, the just being way better in the screen and roll game, because it means you get to run more actions with Pascal and all that kind of stuff, and Fred and Scotty. So it makes him more useful. And then just don't lose anything about yourself, Precious. You're precious, brother. Like do your thing.
Yeah, I like all of that. I don't know if I'll go quite as far to say he'll be on all defense, mostly because I try to view these through the eyes of like who's voting on it as opposed to what should actually happen. So I'll say we'll be aggrieved that he didn't make all defense is what I'll predict for next season.
That's where
it'll
am
be a
now.
very justified aggrieved feeling, but I think that's kind of where he's going to slot in for next year. I would say, yeah, I'm also with you. I'm fully on the board of start him, move Gary Trent to be the sixth man he's born to be, and just roll out Fred, OG, Siakam, Barnes, and Precious, and allow 84 points per 100 possessions in those minutes, thereabouts. Like I think that has the potential to be like a super special defensive lineup, and with the way Precious works a little bit better as just like a guy who doesn't need the ball all the time, the same way Gary Trent Jr. is most effective when the ball's in his hands. He's a good spacer. He's valuable for that, of course, but he sometimes commandeers things a little bit too much. I wonder if maybe just kind of mixing up that dynamic a bit sort of just makes it so it's less of, wow, there's so many mouths to feed in this offense, like we kind of saw with the small ball look this year. I think that kind of bled into what the issues were there. I think Precious just kind of as a spacer, if he can be a 36 or better three-point shooter like we talked about, or 35, whatever it might be, I think that sort of addresses some of the spacing issues you might have if you make that lineup change. Obviously, you got to hope for Scotty and Pascal to kind of tick up a little bit too, just to offer a little bit more shooting. But my grand vision for this team is Scotty and Pascal are the dueling heads of the snake. Everyone else is orbiting around, catching threes off of their gravity and the way they're leveraging defenses. And I think Precious can fit into that quite nicely. Also, please learn to screen. That would be fantastic. Just a little bit of contact. Just watch Kem Birch. Just run into Kem Birch screens all summer long. Just like have him stand there to teach you what it should feel like from the other side or something like that. The Kem Birch school of hitting dudes. But that's all I think we've got for today. Do you have anything you would like to add? Any parting shots, closing thoughts on Precious Achiuwa, or are you good to wrap up? And if so, just share anything you want to plug for the people out there.
I don't think I have anything to plug or to share or to add on Precious. I think this is the shortest episode we've ever been able to do. Which is
and I'm still over time,
for us.
But hey,
we have a tough time with it. So I just want to you let me pick Precious, and Precious is a blast to watch, a blast to talk about. So just thanks for letting me come on and kind of wax poetic with you about Mr. Achiuwa, because he is an absolute delight.
Of course, dude. It was a delight having you on, and we'll have you back on again soon, I'm sure. You can find me at Woodley Sean on Twitter. Find the podcast every day on all your favorite podcast apps and on YouTube. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel, please. I'm begging you. Good sympathy subscriptions. That's all I'm looking for now, baby. Also, you can find my blogs over at Raptors HQ. I will have, at some point in the coming days, a Pascal Siakam season review piece written. So you have that to look forward to. I might write about one of the deep bench guys as well. We'll see what our editorial schedule was looking like. Either way, thank you for tuning in. As always, we'll be back again on Friday. We're going to talk about Gary Trent Jr., baby, and sum up the season that was for my favorite gunner since Terrence Ross. I truly, truly adore watching, thinking about Gary Trent Jr., and we will get into that on Friday for sure. Till then, thank you for tuning in. Go make sure you listen to Locked On Leafs today as they are teeing up Game 6, Leafs and Lightning on Thursday night. That's a big one. They're doing a great job covering the whole series over there on that show, so go support them. And we'll talk to you again on Friday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye.